Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajikacharya Sata Shishimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Divedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaura Premananda, Hari Hari Bolo. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru Angaranga and His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Vishchaya Bhutale, Srimati Vir Krishna Das Kaso. Manksana Kashaya Prabhupada Priya. I'm going to ask you to close the door because it's hard for me to, I'm easily distracted with my ADHD. So can you close the door because it's a little, I'll start getting discombobulated. Sorry. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're in the 10th canto, chapter 70, on text 17. Yeah? Yay. Okay. Sudharmakyam Sabham Sarvair Vishnabhihi Parivarita Pravishad Yan Nivishtanam Na Santi Anga Shad Urmaya Sudharmakyam Sabam Sarvair Vrishnibi Parivarita Pravishad Yanivishtanam Nasantyanga Sadhurmaya Sudharmakyam Sabam Sarvair Vishnibi Parivarita Pravishadhyani Vishtanam Nasantyanga Sadurmaya Sudharmakyam Sadam Sarvair Vishnibi Parivarita Pravishadhyani Vishtanam Nasantyanga Sadurmaya. Vishnibi Parivarita Pravishadhyani Vishtanam Nasantyanga Sadurmaya. Vishnibi Parivarita Pravishadhyani Vishtanam Nasantyanga Sadurmaya. Anybody else? Okay. Sudharma Akyam, known as Sudharma. Sabam, the Royal Assembly Hall. Sarvai, by all. Vrishnibihi, the Vrishnis. Parivarita, attended. Pravishat, he entered. Yat, which. Navishtanam, for those who have entered. Nasanti, do not occur. Anga, my dear king, Parikshit, Sat, the 6, Urmaya, waves. So translation, the Lord, attended by all the Vrishnis, would enter the Sudharma assembly hall, which protects those who enter it from the 6 waves of material life, dear king. So we can repeat. The Lord, attended by all the Vrishnis, would enter the Sudharma assembly hall, which protects those who enter it from the 6 waves of material life. Oh, dear king. So, purport by the servants of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So they share that Srila Prabhupada writes, it may be remembered that the Sudharma Assembly House was taken away from the heavenly planet and was reestablished in the city of Dwarka. The specific significance of the assembly house was that anyone who entered it would be free from the 6 kinds of material pangs, namely hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death. These are the whips of material existence, and as long as one remained in that assembly house of Sudharma, he would not be affected by these 6 material whips. In this regard, Sridhar Swami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explain that when Lord Krishna would exit separately from each of his many palaces, each individual form would be visible to the persons present on those particular palace grounds and to the neighboring residents, but not to others. Then, at the gateway path of the Sudharma Assembly Hall, all the forms of the Lord would merge into a single form, and thus he would enter the hall. Somajnana timidanda shagananjana shalakaya chakshurun militam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I'll read is there any way we could close the door? It's hard for me to focus. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur shares that leaving each palace in each of his forms, each form would be seen only by the residents and surrounded by neighbors of that particular palace and not by others. Coming along the main road up to the entrance of the assembly hall, those forms would then become one, and he would enter the hall with only one form, surrounded Paravaritaha by the Vrishnis. And then Jiva Goswami shares that no one would enter the assembly hall if Krishna did not enter. He entered with music and songs, pra-avishat. Though the hall was great, from having been situated in Swarga, it was even greater because it was now in Krishna's city. Thus, those who entered were not affected by material suffering. And then Sanatana Goswami shares, similar, but a little bit different. No one would enter the assembly hall if Krishna did not enter. He entered with music and songs, pravishat. Its attractive nature is shown. The 6 waves are lamentation, illusion, old age, death, hunger, and thirst, O King Anga. So, in reading this, the thing that stood out to me the most was, again, how Krishna consciousness is all about personalism. That, how much he loves his devotees. And that he reciprocates, because of this love. And he's actually willing to serve them. So, in thinking about how personal he is, he even brought the Sudharma assembly house from the heavenly planets to serve his devotees, right? And in this assembly house, you are free from all the 6 kinds of material pangs, like no hunger, no thirst, no lamentation, illusion, old age, death. And, and then I was thinking, oh, wouldn't you want to stay there forever, right? Like, go into the assembly hall, don't have to worry about hunger or pain, any kind of pain or thirst or lamentation, illusion, no death, let's just stay in the hall and not leave, would be at least maybe the first thought. But then I was thinking, but what do we actually have in this practice of Krishna consciousness? And we actually have the exact same thing, but at a much higher level, at a really high level, and that is through bhakti yoga and through the chanting of the Maha Mantra, and through all those things, we have these, we get this realization, and we get realizations that we're free from all of those things. We're free from all the material pangs. We're free from suffering. We understand that we're not the body and the soul. Therefore, we don't actually die. The body leaves, yes, but we're eternal. And so by this chanting of the Maha Mantra, we're tapped into, like an umbilical cord, we're tapped into the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and He promises all of that. He promises, His devotees that He'll always be there for them, and that, we'll never be without Him. And we'll see everything connected to Him. We'll see every living entity, And so when we attach ourselves like that, through this chanting of the Maha Mantra, through our devotional service, through our different practices, which is why it's important to remember why we're doing what we're doing, is to develop, not just to do them, but to actually develop a relationship with Krishna. And again, I keep going back to how it's all about personalism. And what's so very different, about this and so many other different forms of religious practices is that there's actually this amazing reciprocation. I mean, He was willing to bring this whole, Sudharma Hall down from the heavenly planets so that His, devotees could be taken care of. And then, you've got in these explanations, and it's really interesting between this and some other things that I was actually thinking about. There's these little, what I call pearls that are kind of dropped in there. And one of the things that Jiva Goswami shares in his explanation, that he did bring this amazing hall from the heavenly planets, but it was even greater because it was now in Krishna's city. And so for us, it's the same, is that when we add Krishna to our lives, then everything becomes greater. The realizations, that we're all connected, that we're not this body, that there's this, eternal happiness. There's this, can't think of the words right now, but, Krishna is, the origin of all of that happiness, knowledge, beauty, all those things. We come to put on, these glasses that take away the illusion, that take away birth and death and old age, and really, pull back that curtain of understanding to be able to see things as they are because of our relationship with Him. And so then we don't lament, because we know, even though we, may struggle with different things, we struggle with the body, ultimately we're going to have this amazing, beautiful, intimate, personal relationship with Krishna. And we're not going to be left behind. We're not going to be alone. We're going to be, in the association of all the wonderful devotees, and we get that. So our life is so much greater because Krishna's added to that. And, and something that I've been thinking about too, like in shifting my consciousness, is in working towards and realizing why I should go deeper into and making more personal my chanting of the Maha Mantra, is, not only realizing how beneficial this process is to myself, but because of that, because the deeper you go into Krishna consciousness, the more compassion, you gain. And the more compassion you gain, the more you see every living entity is connected to Krishna and not wanting them to suffer. And so then you want to share in whatever way you can, that beautiful lotus, that beautiful gift of Krishna consciousness to anyone, right? Because this knowledge has the ability to relieve suffering. And it's not that other spiritual practices don't have a connection to God, but there's just so much more in Krishna consciousness. And at least for me, it's this personalism, and the reciprocation that takes place is so tangible, that it validates everything. And one of the things that, as I was going through this and thinking about this, is this gaining of knowledge and becoming realized through this process of giving your heart and your head, your intellect and your emotions, everything that you have to Krishna, was Dhruva Maharaj, and thinking about how. He wanted the greatest of kingdoms. He was wanting power over this unfair treatment by his stepmother and this resolution to this material situation. So he went through really, just extreme austerities, right? He went through so many austerities. And all of that brought about him even obtaining his own planet, the pole star. So through all of that, he gained so much. But then he realized that a relationship with Krishna is even greater, right? Because he went through all these austerities, massive austerities, and then he was able to see Krishna, and and then he was like, oh, how foolish I was, right? And that again, he got to actually see Krishna, and again, his life became greater because he had this, these realizations, but this relationship with Krishna, and he realized how much more valuable that was than all those things that he wanted, and his suffering was real. He wanted the love of his father. His stepmother wouldn't allow it. I think of my own situation. It's so funny. But, with Krishna, life is so much greater, But part of that is getting to the place requires some tapasya. And I've said this in the last couple of classes. One of the things that I had heard in one of the classes that Prabhupada had given is that tapasya is necessary, but the chanting of the Maha Mantra makes it easier. And, and I just was, wow, we know we're going to have to perform these austerities, to some degree. And Krishna, and it tied into me thinking about it because I've been meditating on it and how impactful it was hearing it. But again, preparing or thinking about this class is, why, another reason why is because everything is greater with Krishna. So this chanting, of course, connecting to Krishna is going to make tapasya easier because we know why we're doing what we're doing. We're doing it for the love of God, for the love of Krishna. And then he reciprocates to let us know, how much he really appreciates us endeavoring to have a relationship with him, right? And I was talking, I had that realization listening to Mother Urmila's class of that, these realizations that we get are gifts from Krishna, and there's his way of letting us know that we're doing the right thing, we're going in the right direction, and that he's willing to even share himself personally through these realizations, even while we're still so contaminated. He still wants us to know that he's there for us. He's in our heart. and he's in our mind. And so all these things, come to be, through everything that we're doing in this process. So even though there's this tapasya, and I was listening to another class by Srila Prabhupada, and he's given classes on the pastimes of Maharaj Parikshit, and him getting, his questions answered at the time of, in that 7-day time frame before he's going to leave his body. And he was talking about the differences between atonement and tapasya. And he made another statement, which, he makes so many that are so profound. And one of the things he was talking about is that because Maharaj Parikshit was being tested, around the issue of atonement, and Prabhupada was sharing how in so many different religions there are these atonements. There's 1 day of atonement, and one particular thing, and there's other religions in where you go make confessions. There's and there needs to be atonement. There needs to be some accountability for your actions. But the problem is that if they're not with realized knowledge, then you have a tendency to continue to repeat these things, and then it just becomes, rote. It just becomes a practice. It's not really improving oneself, and you do it again, and then you confess, you do it again, and you confess, and it's this cycle. And he said, as humans, we experiment with so many forms of atonement, but he says the disease of the heart will remain. And to me, that was so, impactful, is that, Krishna consciousness is obviously the solution, because it gives you the knowledge of why you should do what you're doing, in so much detail, and with realization that you're able to make these choices. And I, that was something that a senior devotee had told me a long time ago, as, I was struggling with different things, and they said, one of the things you'll see is that you'll see that the devotees have been at practice, and we're not perfect, and they may not be perfect, but you can see that they've been here for so many years, so they've been through it. And they continue to go through it, so you need to give them credit for that. We need to give credit for everybody we've checked into the hospital, right, to heal ourselves. And so we're not going to be perfect, but again, just this wrapping it into this whole beautiful package that Krishna consciousness is there's this tapasya, there's this realization, there's this personalism, personal relationship, and then, carrying that, to other people. But one of the things that Prabhupada was talking about was that, again, this tapasya, or austerities, is required. And it's a part of this equation in order to get a very specific result. And so again, that's why it's so important to remember why we're doing what we're doing, that it's not just, to practice for the sake of practicing, but it's for a particular result. And so what that does is that sets a goal, and it's really important to, remember that goal, because that's what carries you forward. And I feel like that's why, Krishna, one of the reasons Krishna, reciprocates through realizations is, that keeps us moving forward. And then it's also kind of like, I wouldn't say a reward, but, in the context that, it's reinforcement that, we're doing the right thing and that we are going in the right direction. And then, but one of the things that stood out in the lecture that Prabhupada was talking about is that this tapasya is required, and that's what makes us human. Otherwise, we're animals. And I thought that was also really interesting. Because, the difference between humans is, there's this, and animals is there are these four
things where there's eating, mating, sleeping, and defending. And he was talking about how all those things, the human has this unique, intellectual ability to make choices and to make those choices in a way that, animals don't have that ability to have a relationship with Krishna or with God. And to have, in other words, they're totally wrapped up in their body. And they think their body. And that if we, think we're our body, then we're no better than animals. And so part of that and gaining that knowledge and having this unique situation and having a human body is performing tapasya. And he talked about how that medicine is unpleasant at first, but again, the Maha Mantra will make taking that medicine so much easier. And then there was this thought that I had that popped into my mind about when I was a little kid. There was a film called Mary Poppins, and one of the songs in that was, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down, right? And so that just kept going through my head, is that a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down in a most delightful way. And I was thinking here again, that this chanting of the Maha Mantra, which is a medicine for the heart, and also at the same time, the means and the end, it's non-different than Krishna, is that there's this sweetness in the chanting of the Maha Mantra. And that is, the spoonful of sugar that helps the medicine of tapasya, the medicine of being in this material world, the pains of the body, the pains of, adhyatmic, adhibautic, adhidaivik. And so, we're just remembering that, that, and my spiritual master talks about that quite often, that he had a realization early on that, it was so amazing that he could, through the chanting of the Maha Mantra, he could always have his best friend with him at all times. There was never a time when, he didn't have to, that he had to be bereft or separated from Krishna, that he always had that through the chanting of the Maha Mantra. And so we too, so everything becomes greater with Krishna, right? The Sudharma Assembly Hall, must be just amazing, right? And you walk into it and you get rid of, no death, no pain, no old age and all those other things. And you would think, wow, I would really want that. But then no, I really want Krishna. That's what we really want, because that's what makes our life so much better in the long run. And so, again, at least for me, because sometimes it's easy to become complacent, and it's easy when we're struggling with our own struggles to kind of not really forget about personalism, but not really think about it as much, thinking about our own situation. But for me, in trying to be more personal through my relationship with Krishna and through, my activities related to that, and just thinking about this process of Krishna consciousness, because to me, this Krishna consciousness is like personalism on steroids. It's just, it's so tangible, this relationship with Krishna. It's just so tangible, the realizations, when you dress the deities, after years and years of dressing, or after years and years in cooking, and having this personal interaction with Krishna, there's just something different. And what's really amazing is that other people can tell there's something different. Like, people that don't necessarily practice Krishna consciousness can tell there's something different about devotees. A lot of times when, there's a preaching program, now I can't remember if it's New Zealand, Australia, where they have, the yoga preaching, and a lot of times in specific classes or circumstances, they only want several devotees there, just a couple of devotees, because when you get a whole group of devotees, it ends up centering around that and not so much, the different people that they're trying to share Krishna consciousness with. Because there's, people notice that there's a difference, and you want to allow them, in certain circumstances, some room, to kind of be themselves as they slowly shift towards that, right? So there's something very unique about this process. And, even though I'm not sure how much he actually meant it, one of the things my father said when he was sharing about talking to his friends and saying he doesn't really know what I do, he said, I just know that she's been the happiest she's ever been in her life. And so, again, there's something so tangible about Krishna consciousness, right? And there's something so joyful that you can still be Krishna conscious and happy in the most desperate of situations, because everything is greater with Krishna. Everything is greater with Krishna. And so, we've been in so many impersonal situations. And again, for me, that was what has stood out about this process, is that I've personally been in so many impersonal situations throughout my life, so many different circumstances, and sometimes feeling like I didn't even exist, sometimes, just being treated like a non-person, so many different situations that I'd been through. So when I came in touch with Krishna Conscious, it was just so amazingly different and so amazingly personal that I felt like I was home, right? That was one of the things that I really, truly felt when I was first coming to Krishna Conscious, is one, it was very familiar to me. But whenever I would go to visit new temples, as it was being shared with me, with other devotees, it just always felt like home, and it always felt like family, because everybody was so welcoming and so warm and so loving, and that's what Krishna consciousness has to offer, is personalism on steroids, right? And by this one little simple thing of adding Krishna into your life, and making it so much greater and so much better through that. It's just, the gift that we have is it's just unfathomable, as to what we have in this Krishna consciousness, that it's actually going to save us from death and disease, old age, illusion, any kind of pain. It's going to take all of those away, at the time of death. And like I think, because we've lost people in the community, and it will continue to happen because that's what happens in the material world. But I've often thought about how beautiful even the process of death is in the community of devotees, within the community of devotees, because we don't have to do it alone. We get to have the association of the devotees to help us work, go through that. I mean, we have to go through it ultimately ourselves, by ourselves, I get that. But with the chanting, our spiritual master will be there to carry us through, Srila Prabhupada will be there to carry us through, Krishna will be there to carry us through, the devotees will be there to carry us through. So even death is greater with Krishna added, right? It's and death is not an easy thing. So, but through this association and gaining all this knowledge, the heart becomes peaceful. It becomes fulfilled. It becomes happy. It becomes joyful. And it's just, it's kind of like, wow, when you think about it. And so when it does get tough, remembering, why we're doing what we're doing, but then, also taking shelter of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, taking shelter of the deities, taking shelter of the devotees, taking shelter of these great acharyas by reading and associating with them, because, we are, through the chanting of the Mahamantra, the mantra is non-different than Krishna, so he's there dancing on our tongue, he's there in our heart. And it's the same thing when we read the scriptures. It's not just reading words. It's almost like those words are alive, and as we're hearing them, we're being wrapped, they're wrapping around us, and they're cocooning us, and then they're giving us knowledge, and they're going to the heart, so they're actually dynamic. These spiritual words and scriptures are dynamic, and therefore our whole life is dynamic. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts or questions. Maybe not. There was another thought that I had, and I was going back through my notes. And I guess what it does is it just reflects on or magnifies again how great Krishna is. But one of the things that was really interesting is that Sridhar Swami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explained that Krishna would exit separately from each of his many palaces. Each individual form would be visible to the persons present on those particular palace grounds and to the neighboring residents, but not to others. Then at the gateway of the path of the Sudharma Assembly Hall, all the forms of Krishna, forms of the Lord would merge into a single form, and thus he would enter the hall. And again, for me, that was just another magnification or another example of personalism. And what's so great and very different from Krishna, but that he's willing to, expand himself unlimitedly to reciprocate with his devotees, to these 16,108 wives, and to all the different people, and be personally present for them in a very unique and individual relationship with them in each of their houses. And to have all these different pastimes, different in all these different places. And he's willing, again, he brings the assembly hall to serve his devotees. He's always willing to serve his devotees. And so, he takes on these different forms, and, obviously they appear individual, but they're not. That's what's, so unique about Krishna, is that he can manifest in so many different, in every single living entity, every single living cell, Krishna is present. So he's actually personally present at all times to all living entities. It's just a matter of realization. But again, that was just for me another, as I was reading through this and going back and thinking about my notes, that was just, another circumstance of Krishna willing to reciprocate with his devotees and, serve his devotees. And I think Mother Urmila was talking about that a little bit in class, that, many of the devotees, Krishna is the object, right? And then, as the devotees, as pure devotees, it switches where, the pure devotee becomes Krishna's object of love, and he becomes beloved. So there's this little bit of transposition of positions, that take place. But again, just for me at least, just another magnification of or example of the personalism that, the lengths to which Krishna is willing to go. I think that was why when I had shared with Urmila about realizations being Krishna's reciprocation, it made me realize how much Krishna really loves me. That, I've done so many things in this material world. I've wasted so much time. I've done 100 million things that I wish I had never done, but Krishna loves me. He still loves me regardless, and he's still willing to show that he loves me through the realization, and I just, that can be overwhelming, to think about how much Krishna really loves us, no matter what's happening on any level. He's willing to reciprocate to bring us back to him, no matter who we are. And devotee, non-devotee, doesn't matter. So all glories to Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada, Association of the Devotees, Ki Jai. All glories to Shri Shri Radha Golokananda. Yeah.
Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Enam Kanvandam Maravindanalayataksam Bharavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandar Agom Vidamaniyam Nishesha Shobham Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakalen Priya Priti Manti Vasyanti Pan Vikayanti Chiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham
Vajahure Mana Shri Nandanana Abhaya Charanara Vindure Jahure Mana Shri Nandanana Abhaya Charana Vindure Dulabha Manava Janama Satsange Dulabha Manava Janama Satsange Taro Hoe Vava Sindure Sita Atapa Vatabharishana Edina Jamini Jagire Matapa Vatabharishana Edina Jamini Jagire Vipali Sevinu Kripana Durjana Vipali Sevanu Kripana Durjana Shapala Sukha Lava Lagire Etana Yavana Putra Parijana Iteki Achiparati Tire Edina Yavana Putra Parijana Kieche Achiparati Tire Kamala Dala Jala Jivana Tala Mala Kamala Tala Jala Jivana Tala Mala Bajahu Hari Padani Tire Shravana Kirtana Smarana Vandana Parasevana Dashare Shravana Kirtana Smarana Vandana Parasevana Dashare Pujana Saki Jana Admani Vedana Pujana Saki Jana Hadmani Vedana Govinda Dahasabila Share Vajahure Mana Shri Nanda Abhaya Charanara Vinure Dulaba Manava Janama Satsange Dulaba Manava Janama Satsange Taro Hoe Bava Sindure Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Goloka Nanda, Radha Goloka Nanda, Hare. Jaya Radha Goloka Nanda, Radha Goloka Nanda, Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Sri Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Sri Radhe. Jaya Giri Govardhan, Jaya Giri Govardhan, Jaya Giri Govardhan, Jaya Giri Govardhan. Jayam Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Padavrajagacharya Sata Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Seho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Gopi Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Gangamai Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda, Hari Hari Bolo, all glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Garanga and His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O mind, just worship the lotus feet of the son of Nanda, which make one fearless. Having obtained this rare human birth, cross over this ocean of worldly existence by associating with saintly persons. Day and night I remain sleepless, suffering heat and cold, wind and rain. For a bit of flickering happiness, I have vainly served wicked and miserly men. What assurance of real happiness is there in all one's wealth, youth, sons, and relatives? This life totters like a drop of water on a lotus petal. Therefore, you should always worship the lotus feet of Lord Hari. Govindadas longs to hear the glories of the Lord Hari. Chant his glories, constantly remember him, offer him prayers, serve his lotus feet, become his servant, worship him, offer him prayers, serve his lotus feet again, become his servant, worship him, and serve him as a friend, and completely offer him his very self. Srila Govinda Das Kaviraj Ki Jai, Radha Golokananda Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Darpa. Trapitani Nasmarane Nakala Etadrishita Vakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaiva Midrishamiha Janina Nuragaha Trinadapi Suhishnichana Tarorapi Suhishnana Amanina Manatena Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Vajagarishvakamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishvare Bhavatad Bhakti Rahaituki Twayi Ayinanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Budao Kripaya tava pada pankajas tita duli sadrisham vinchatayam. Nayanam galada shrudaraya vandanam gadgada rudaya gira. Pulakayar nichitam vapaukada tavanama grahane bhavishyati. Yugayitam nimishenina chakshusha pravrishayitam shunyayitam jagat sarvam govinda vedahena me ashlishava padaratam panishtumam adarshanam amarhatam karotuva yatatatava vidhaudatu lampato mat prananatastu saeva naparaha. Victory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. The Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we were always anxious. O my Lord, congregational chanting of your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names, like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind. Thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful men and any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus